Ray wakes up after some time and is horrified to discover Vivian covered in blood. He quickly makes notes in Vivian's book to help her recover from the wounds. Obviously, this will never happen because his writing renders it useless. He finds himself attempting to guide Vivian's hand to write, but it also proves to be unsuccessful. To swiftly seek assistance, he gets to his feet and gently carries Vivian's body towards the castle. At the castle, Carl, stunned by the news about Vivian and Ray, immediately heads to the woods to search for them. Princess Sylvia steps up to congratulate him, but he wants to rush to the woods, so he disregards her words. However, an arrow flies past him, startling him. He turns to Sylvia, realizing her treachery. He sees a group of Middle Lauren knights encircling him with crossbows in their hands, and they tie him once he cannot put up a fight. Meanwhile, William's knights are doing their best to defend their master from Middle Lorian assassins. William realizes that his side is at a disadvantage, so he joins the battle and shows off his spear skills. However, he has to abandon his plan when he notices that Princess Sylvia has taken Erden prisoner. Sylvia expresses her contempt for the princes of Farrison as she stomps on Carl's head and makes fun of his missing eye. She declares that she wanted to kill both the princes in the race, but they are tougher than she thought. After taking both princes as prisoners, she slaps them in front of the crowd to vent her frustration. William attempts to talk with Princess Sylvia and offers her a deal to avoid war despite her actions, but he is hit again. Unbeknownst to her, Minerva witnessed Sylvia's harsh treatment of the two fairies and princes. The crazy princess tries to convince her to abandon her cheating ex-husband, but Minerva is not going to forgive anyone who harms her man. She charges towards Sylvia and the Middle Lauren. Soldiers try their best to stop her, but fail. One of the knights threatens to kill William to keep Minerva at bay, but it proves to be fruitless as Erden frees herself and takes care of the soldier attempting to harm her prince. Following this, Erden frees William from the rope while Minerva frees Carl. Together, the three of them put an end to the chaos caused by Princess Sylvia and her entourage of knights, and then they all get caught and bound. After everything calms down, William approaches Minerva to express his gratitude and tries to talk about the incident that led to their divorce. She tells them to tidy up before they speak, since she is really looking forward to hearing it in detail. William is overjoyed, and at the same time, Carl frees Daisy and then decides to find Vivian and Ray. He doesn't need to do anything as Vivian and Ray manage to make it to the castle despite their injuries. Upon witnessing their condition, Carl is taken aback and promptly has them transported to the castle for medical attention. Vivian wakes up the following morning feeling completely fine and without any physical injuries. Ray is still unconscious when she rolls out of bed. Shortly after she regains consciousness, the doctor visits her along with Daisy and tells her that Ray's life is not in danger since his critical organs are unharmed. Since Vivian hasn't seen Carl since waking up, she asks Daisy where he is. Daisy informs her that Carl spent the night watching out for her, but has some urgent trial matters to attend to. This morning, at another location, William argues with the Royal Guard commander about Princess Sylvia's trial, which he refuses to acknowledge because the Royal Guard is conducting it. Since the incident occurred on his land, he insists that the trial is held there as well. Even Minerva disagrees with the decision, but Carl does nothing more than watch while they argue. Just as things get heated, Vivian pops in. She embraces and kisses Carl without hesitation in front of everyone. Minerva is not caught off guard, as she suspected all along that Carl and Vivian have some connection. William is shocked, and furthermore, the butler Bruce appears to be aghast. William comes to congratulate Carl on his victory in the race. When he and Vivian have completed catching up, he also fulfills his commitment to let Vivian pass through the tunnel door. Later, they discuss their future plans, and Carl informs Vivian what he wanted to tell her when he won the race. He wants her to stay with him, even if it means that she can never change his ending and he has to live like a villain for the rest of his life. He expresses his desire to remain by her side and his distaste for her returning to the real world. Then he gets down on one knee and asks Vivian if she will marry him. She accepts Carl's proposal by immediately embracing him, showing that his words touch her deeply. Later, they announce their intention to get married with everyone present in William's castle. Everyone is filled with joy by the good news, and they celebrate well into the night, except for Ray, obviously. The next morning, Vivian finds herself in Carl's room, right next to her future husband. Last night, she got too drunk and doesn't remember anything beyond pulling Carl into his room, despite his resistance. Now that the unrest event is over, Carl and his company are returning to his castle. Minerva also prepares for some knights to be stationed in the northern castle, as she wants to assist her friends. They return to the north, savoring the journey. But then, out of nowhere, they hear a scream. It turns out that it was coming from an imperial messenger who was being robbed by bandits. Even though Carl and Vivian are unaware of the man's identity, they attempt to help him. But even before they can do that, the bandits flee for their lives, leaving the knight bewildered. The reason becomes clear as a group of monsters walks towards them. Vivian hurries up to the monsters to comfort them, while Carl advises his knights to remain composed, as the monsters pose no threat if left undisturbed. The monsters seem to want to take Vivian somewhere when they meet her. The little monster then appears right in front of Vivian, telling her to follow him, but not allowing Carl to come along. The monster gang leads Vivian to their destination at a slow pace initially, but eventually they have her ride on their back and ride as fast as a horse. Carl desperately pursues her alone, and as Doris frees the messenger, he tells them that the prince immediately needs to go to the capital since the emperor has been killed. Meanwhile, the monsters lead Vivian deep into the forest, and they eventually come to a huge tree. Vivian realizes that this is the world tree, but it is covered with something dark and greasy. Suddenly, the little monster goes inside the tree, and after a deafening buzzing sound, a gigantic talking monster pops out of the tree and starts talking with Vivian. It explains that all the monsters were actually spirits that ensured that everything in this world happens. According to Vivian's writing, the world tree sent them to talk to the author, but they failed each time until it sends a baby monster. The gigantic monster then tells her that this world is in a crisis because one character who gained awareness that it is a character in a book and is now trying to destroy this world. He is the butler, Bruce, who serves the first prince. This happened because Vivian neglected the character background. In the first and second novels, Bruce's age, appearance, and even his personality underwent significant changes from the first novel to the second, resulting in his newfound self-awareness. Bruce burnt the world tree after becoming aware of his fate. That made the world tree weak and corrupted the spirits, and they were about to vanish forever. As a result, the world tree dispatched Carl to Earth to meet the author so that she can solve the problem. But instead, he brought her into the novel. After she arrived, the power of the spirits weakened even further due to her magic notebook, and now it is reaching its end. Ray put a lot of effort into healing her, so the book is almost spent, and it has only one usable page left in it. The giant monster finishes their chat by telling Vivian to get back to Earth, using the first prince's pathway as soon as possible to save this world. If she doesn't do that, everything in this world, including her, will disappear. All the spirits disappear except for the little monster who guides Vivian forward. Meanwhile, Carl arrives to pick up Vivian, who is torn because of what she just heard. After that, they go back to the castle together. But as they meet with their group, they learn the unbelievable news that Carl's mother, Madame Brenda, murdered the emperor. The news shocks them since, from what they understand, Madame Brenda showed the emperor nothing but love and care. Carl and Vivian can't believe that she killed him, even though she was caught red-handed. They reason that someone who despises the royal family is trying to frame her. The messenger tells Carl to wait for the royal guards who will escort him to the palace. But Ray has suspicions about it and dismisses the messenger. Ray insists that they go to the capital. He believes this is the perfect moment to acquire power and solidify Carl's right to the throne, while he offers to secretly enter the prison with Vivian to save Madame Brenda. Apparently, Bruce and the commander of the royal guards are plotting something behind the scenes as well. They think Carl will surely come to save his mom, and they are ready to deal with him. However, the commander doesn't completely trust Bruce ever since he found out about his involvement in the actions of Princess Sylvia. Meanwhile, Carl and his group make their way to the imperial palace. Vivian continues to think about the only remaining passage to the real world. She is sure that it is in the library where Oscar first came to this world and met his love, Uria. She is not certain about which library it is, so she asks Ray about it, and he thinks it could be the Grand Library in the palace. In the palace, the commander of the Royal Guard prepares to stop Carl from saving his mother and seals every entrance to the prison. They are unaware, though, that Carl and Ray have already parted ways in order to implement their scheme. They also have no idea that Ray has discovered a way to enter through the sewer. Ray, Vivian, and the baby monster set out on their adventure. Inside the sewer, Vivian shrinks herself, using her book to open the locked door from the other side. However, she has only one usable page, so she writes as small as she can. As she shrinks, she and the baby monster squeeze into a room through a small hole. Vivian rides on the baby monster's back for some extra speed. Fortunately, they arrive at their destination and reach a room where Vivian returns to her original size and opens the door. She is shocked when she sees a soldier there, but it is just Ray. He gives her a spare armor set to blend into, and then they go inside. Meanwhile, Carl storms into the conference room where Oscar and the other nobles hold a discussion about what to do next, planning the coronation of the new emperor, preparing for the emperor's death, or prosecuting Madame Brenda. However, a decision was not made when Carl arrived, and Oscar decides to postpone the useless meeting because he wants to have a private conversation with his half-brother. Carl becomes enraged as his mother is falsely accused of killing his father. He swiftly places his blade around Oscar's neck, not waiting for him to speak. His mother's devotion to the emperor is all he knows. Therefore, he knows she would never do anything like that. Oscar, who knows Madame Brenda's actual character better than anybody else, laughs at Carl's remarks. He says that she doesn't love the emperor and asks Carl to consider the reasons she has for killing the emperor. He claims that he gave Madame Brenda an opportunity to repent, but she remained unconvinced. Oscar is now telling Carl that he will spare his mom's life and allows him to become the emperor, as his only desire is for Uria to recover, and for that, he requires the assistance of the author of their story, Vivian. Meanwhile, Vivian and Ray head to the prison room where Madame Brenda is supposedly held, but the security is too lax. However, the moment Vivian enters the room, Ray locks her inside and she finds a sword pointed at her with Bruce holding it. Vivian is pinned against the door, and she realizes that Ray has betrayed her and made a deal with Bruce. She asks him why he did that, and Bruce decides to tell her that the reason for all of Carl's misfortunes is her mother. It all started when Carl failed a diplomatic mission and a powerful noble named Duke Lily solved the problem. The emperor feared the Duke's influence, and what's more, he was paranoid that the Duke is attempting to seize control of the royal family by arranging a marriage between his daughter Uria and Oscar. He wanted to do something about them, and Madame Brenda gave him an idea to frame the innocent Uria for trying to assassinate the emperor. She gave the girl poisoned tea and then requested that she deliver it to the emperor to improve her image in his eyes. She also told her to drink it so that the poison may slowly affect her, and she may never be able to testify about her innocence when the matter is investigated. However, Uria encountered Carl and gave him the tea, just as she was about to present it to the emperor. Even though Madame Brenda never even imagined this, Carl ended up being the one accused of attempting to poison his own father. It's called karma. On the other side, Oscar informs Carl that he requires Vivian's power to heal Uria, but he replies that it is impossible. Oscar becomes violent upon hearing this. But at that moment, the commander arrives and apprehends Carl. Even as Carl deals with him, he insists that Vivian's powers do not work on others. At that moment, a servant informs Oscar that Ray and Vivian are in the dungeon. He decides to meet the author and witness her powers firsthand. Additionally, he instructs the commander to allow Carl to remain in his office in the prison. Vivian is shocked to hear the story. Bruce informs her that ensuring everyone's happiness simply requires healing Uria. However, Vivian explains that she is unable to do so as her powers do not work on others. He becomes angry at this because her powers changed him, and Vivian informs him that it was a mistake. However, Bruce says that if Vivian fails to cure Uria, he will murder all of her loved ones, one by one. Just then, Oscar's servants arrive and escort Vivian to the palace. Meanwhile, Bruce fulfilled his deal with Ray and allowed Madame Brenda to escape to the Western Palace with Princess Lily. Ray informed Brenda that Carl will have learned the truth about his banishment by now and advised her to conceal her existence from the world. Meanwhile, Bruce is leading Vivian to the palace as he asks about her power. He lacks awareness, information about her need to write in a notebook for her powers to function, and she wishes to discover a method to distract Bruce in order to write something. Fortunately, the little monster steps in to help her out and attacks Bruce, causing him to lose his balance. Vivian sees this as a chance to flee, but the knights have already caught up with her. She whips out her notebook and starts writing in an effort to shrink herself. She is able to do that, flees the prison with the help of the baby monster, and runs to Carl. Bruce watches her writing in her book, and now he knows the secret to her power, so he wants the book as well. After Vivian and the baby monster come out of the prison, they are bewildered because they have no idea where Carl is. He is currently tied in Oscar's office, attempting to free himself by grabbing a paper knife from the table. However, in a surprising turn of events, a butler arrives at the scene, dismisses the guards, and warmly welcomes Carl, hinting at a past encounter. Carl realizes he must do something to escape, so he offers to accept Oscar's deal and states that he will ask Vivian to help them, but the assassin bursts into laughter on hearing this. He believes Carl is pitiful, and as he shares some details of their past confrontation, Carl realizes that he is the assassin who took his eye. He draws his sword to deal with him, stating that it is not worth fighting him if he can give away his lover so easily. He attempts to attack Carl, but he kicks the table at him and causes him to fall. Carl takes the paper knife in the same motion and frees himself. He then confidently informs the assassin that this weapon is sufficient to ensure his victory against someone of his caliber. Vivian is overjoyed to see Carl again, and they hug each other. They tell each other the gist of the things that happen, and after that, Vivian asks Carl to exit the palace right away. However, her plans come to a halt when the little monster instructs her to go to the portal door of the palace. She decides to follow him and tells Carl that she has no choice but to return to her world. She recalls that everything in this world will be destroyed if she doesn't take action, and she wants to save it. However, she doesn't want to lose her lover and asks Carl to join her in the real world to fix everything. Without hesitating, Carl accepts her invitation, stating that he will accompany her wherever she goes. Afterwards, the baby monster leads both of them to the grand library room. When the little monster uses its power and headbutts the wall, the door to the real world manifests in it. Our heroes are stunned, but they are both ready to walk through the door. Unfortunately, just as they were about to enter, Bruce shot an arrow that struck the baby monster, and the portal door was naturally shut. After the baby monster got injured, Bruce commands the guards to apprehend Carl, and Vivian insists that returning to her world is the only way to make things right here. Oscar also shows up at the library not long after that. He is filled with joy at the sight of Vivian, and he promises to give her anything she desires if she will heal Urea. Vivian is more concerned with healing the tiny monster's wounds so that she can use them to leave her world, and she tells Oscar the same. He would do everything for Urea, so he grants Vivian's request and told Bruce to contact the doctor. However, Bruce revealed his true nature as he stabbed him in the back while telling him that compassion was his weakness. To prevent Vivian and Carl from helping Oscar, the knights brandished their swords at Carl. At last, Bruce addressed Vivian and told her that he knew she had created this fantasy world. He hates her for making him change without even a reason, and he strangles her as she says it was a good thing for him to become younger. Bruce demands Vivian give him the notebook because he wants to write his destiny himself and become the emperor. As Bruce announces his ambitions to become emperor, everyone is caught off guard to buy time until her little monster is strong enough to open the portal. Vivian wanted to write something else, but Bruce stepped on her hand so that he could see what she was writing. He threatened to kill Carl if she didn't write what he wanted, and she realized she had no choice. Just then, out of nowhere, a knight charged Bruce from behind. Bruce evades the attack and then stabs the knight in the stomach before removing his helmet to reveal that he was actually Ray. He thrashes Ray, who has not lost all hope yet. and he acts as if he is furious with Vivian and says that she always denied Carl's request and was granting Bruce's request to be the emperor instead. That was just his way of reminding her of what happened when she tried to fulfill Carl's first request, and she promptly recorded Bruce's wishes in her notebook. Ray's gamble proves right, and the glowing letters she wrote encircle Bruce's body, who at first believes his dream of becoming emperor would come true. However, the truth soon became evident as the writing was too painful for Bruce to bear. He furiously lunged towards Vivian, but Carl swiftly parried the blow, and Bruce fell unconscious to the floor. The entrance to the real world reappears following that event, but just as Carl and Vivian are ready to step through the entrance, an earthquake shakes the castle because Vivian had completely used up her notebook. The situation becomes even more complicated when the palace walls start to crumble, causing debris to fall on Ray. Seeing Ray hit by the ruins devastates Carl, but he also feels the need to return to the real world because he is afraid the door might shut. As soon as Vivian sees that Carl is trapped in the rubble of the building, she rushes over to help him escape. However, he encourages her to hurry up and go for the door, saying that they can't afford to waste any time now. He kisses her hand and expresses his regret to Vivian for being unable to join her in the real world. He asks her to let him remember her even if they cannot meet again, and tears fall from Vivian's eyes as she promises to return shortly. She enters the portal and suddenly finds herself back in the real world, where she meets Guyon, the landlord's daughter. Vivian is taken aback by Guyon's words, since she spent months in the fictional world, but only a day has passed in the real world. She rushes to her room to finish revising her work, ensuring that everything in the Pharesan kingdom will be just as it had been previously. As soon as she does that, she runs out of the room and returns to the spot where the portal was. But by the time she arrives, it has disappeared. Tears flood her eyes as she vents her frustration at being unable to visit Carl in the fictional realm. She punches the wall, hoping a path can open up, but it is all in vain. Soon after that, she abruptly leaves her job without telling anyone her reasons and devotes herself to writing the next book with Carl as the protagonist. After a year, Vivian completes her most recent book, the third one in the Prince series. Carl becomes the emperor and everyone is happy, but she doesn't know how to end the book. Suddenly, Guyon comes to Vivian and asks her about the ending of her novel. She shows her the latest chapter that was released about Carl choosing a woman from a foreign country to be his empress. Vivian is shocked because she never wrote that. But as she contacts her editor, he is adamant that she sent this chapter to him. She wants to check her revised work, so she hurries back to her apartment to grab her laptop, unaware of the light following her. As she reaches her room, she sees a shining golden puppy there. She wants to call 911 to get it out, but as she hears its voice, she realizes it is the little spirit who helped her. Before Vivian can realize anything, the little spirit teleports her back to the realm of the novel. Vivian finds herself in bed and wonders if she has just seen the little monster in a dream. However, as she sees herself dressed in a magnificent gown and then Daisy enters her room, Vivian realizes that she is back in the world of her novel. However, Daisy doesn't recognize her at all, and neither does Ray, even though Vivian is super happy to see them both again. After that, Ray escorts her to the banquet hall for a special event. Vivian asks her what is happening, and as she learns that it is the day for Carl's wedding, she feels devastated. She asks Ray who the bride is, and he tells her that she is already here, and that she will know her when she sees her. Vivian sees William and Minerva, as well as Oscar and Yuria with each other, and she is happy to see her protagonists again. Just then, a knight declares that the emperor and his bride are about to enter the room. Vivian is bewildered because the story seems to have progressed without her will again. She wonders if Carl remembers her and ponders how she should ask him. The knight then announces everyone would make way for the bride, and shockingly enough, people start making way for her. Carl calls her from behind. She is surprised that he still remembers her because everyone seems to have forgotten her. However, that was just a big and elaborate prank. Everyone important to the story knows Vivian, and they are just acting like they have forgotten her to surprise her. After Carl teases her about being nervous because of his wedding, he tells her what happened. He tells her that he had completely forgotten about her once she departed from this world. However, he felt like there was a void in his heart that could never be fulfilled no matter what he did. And even after being the emperor, he felt sad. Then one day, the little monster who had become a pure spirit came before Carl with Vivian's notebook, which still contained a fragment of her power. As soon as Carl touched the notebook, the memories of Vivian flooded into his mind, and he was moved to tears. With that, he started working towards bringing her back. He went to the World Tree and from there to the real world, where he messed up with the ending of Vivian's novel and wrote about his marriage. He was hopeful that she would come after him after reading that, and somehow or another, his hopes came true. Vivian is overjoyed to hear this, but she is still worried that the world will collapse because she is here. However, Carl assures her that the Prince series is over, and now this story is about the witch named Vivian, who wrote the book. Carl finally kneels down before her and asks her if she would marry him. There is no reason for Vivian to say no to him, and she gladly takes his hand. They kiss, realizing that their lives are now blank pages, and they are the creators of their story now.
Love the manhwa? Subscribe for more. Your support makes it all possible. Hit subscribe now!